Hello, everybody, and happy Wednesday, and welcome to another edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live right here on Giants.com and the Giants mobile app. John Schmeelk, Lance Medow with you. We'll take your calls a little bit later on in the show at 201-939-4513, but we continue our opponent preview series, and we move on to the Arizona Cardinals, who will be the Giants' first out-of-division opponent this season in Week 2. And to join us to talk about him is Craig Grialou. He covers the Cardinals for the Arizona Cardinals team site. Craig, you got John Schmeelk and Lance Medow here in East Rutherford, New Jersey. I hope we've had rain about 4 or 5 straight days. Something tells me in Arizona you haven't had that problem.
I believe the high today is supposed to be 108 with potentially
only
110 coming this weekend.
Wow, that is, I'm happy. I'd rather deal with the rain, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, that's frying egg on the sidewalk weather. That's what that is.
100%. So, Craig, give me your 20,000-foot view of where the Cardinals are, new regime, all that stuff, what you've seen in the spring. Just kind of set the stage for, like, the state of the franchise, and then we can kind of dig into some more details.
A lot of new, whether it's the front office, head coach, coaching staff, roster turnover, and just a lot of questions that still need to be answered, and whether they get answered in training camp, who knows. But, look, a lot needed to be changed considering what happened a year ago and even going back over the last year and a half, 2 seasons. So a new vibe in the building, a new energy out on that football field, but it's, okay, how does that translate on the football field? And that's the big unknown in all of this. But there is an excitement just because whenever anything is new, you want to see what that new toy is, and we'll get that soon enough. Week 1 at Washington, and then Week 2 against you guys.
Well, speaking of the matchup with the Giants, I think the million-dollar question, Craig, is Kyler Murray's status for that game, and will he be back under center given the fact that he tore his ACL in December, which is relatively late in the year. From what you're hearing about his rehab process and looking ahead to training camp, how likely is it that Week 1 or Week 2 could realistically be a shot here?
We have not really got anything definitive or any really sense of where things stand in Murray's timetable, except for one. He is in the facility every single day. In fact, I saw him just earlier this week, and he's one of the few players that are still in the building, considering now this is, quote-unquote, the real offseason where everyone is gone until training camp. But he was present during OTAs and minicamp. He was seen on the field watching, learning, instructing his teammates. I think the big key will be training camp. Does he start on the physically unable to perform list? Now, he can come off that at any point, but How much practice time does Kyler get in the month of August? And is there enough practice time to where he could potentially be available Week 1, Week 2? Just my own personal opinion, I think the Cardinals have slow played this since the beginning, and I think they'll continue to do that. There's no need to rush him or any other injured player at this point. But I do think if we're being cautious and predicting, my guess is that Kyler does miss time, whether that's a month or more. But I would not expect him, without knowing anything, I would not expect him those first 2 weeks and maybe that first month.
And Craig, look, I know no team's going to say this publicly, and I know, you aren't going to say it publicly either, but I got to feel like playing this slow kind of makes sense, right? You have a brand new regime in there. There's going to be patience. You have an injured quarterback coming back. If you want to, get to where you want to go, he needs to be 100% healthy somewhere down the road, so you don't want to rush him. And I'm not going to go as far as to say, wins and losses don't matter in the first year, but it's not like the team's going to be in a playoff or bust, rush them back type of mentality. I mean, this is a pretty long-term rebuild from what I'm looking at in terms of the roster, right?
You're not wrong, and that's pretty much the sentiment even here locally, but I'll go back to where Jonathan Gannon came from with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they went from 4 wins to the Super Bowl in just a year's time. So it's not out of the question, but you're right. There seems to be, based off the moves that have been made, the drafting, the moves that weren't made, as far as acquiring talent in free agency, there does appear to be a little bit more of an eye towards the future, whether that is 2024 or 2025. I'll say this, though, this is an important season just for this new regime to lay the foundation.
Sure.
And create that culture of winning. Winning behavior is what head coach Jonathan Gannon likes to say. There is winning behavior. Now, again, how does that materialize on the field? And can what we're hearing from Monty Ossenfort or Jonathan Gannon, does that kind of fall on deaf ears at some point this season if you're not seeing some positive results on the football field, and maybe not so much in wins and losses, but is there progress being made by these young players? Is there progress? Is there development there? And then some of these new faces that they've brought in, a lot of prove-it one-year contracts and guys trying to maybe reestablish themselves, and if a big year individually could lead to long-term success down the road. But no, this is a kind of wait and see year, and then kind of move forward off of that.
It's interesting you mentioned the one-year contracts, Craig, because it reminds me of the Houston Texans' approach, too, when they also brought a new regime in. And I know now they have another new regime, but they didn't want to bottle up long-term contracts across the board. It seems Arizona is having a similar approach. So if we go by your projection that Kyler Murray, in all likelihood, will be sidelined for that Week 2 matchup and perhaps the first month, it's possible Colt McCoy could be the starter, who we're familiar with. He was here with the Giants, actually went into Seattle, helped the Giants win a game. I know they brought in David Blau late last season. Two-part question for you. Number one, who do you foresee the first guy up in place of Kyler Murray? And number two, I think it's fair to say, Craig, whether it was Murray or any of those other quarterbacks, the offensive line wasn't too friendly for any of those guys late last season. I know they had some injuries. What's the outlook for that group, especially given the fact that they're going to have a brand new center in the mix at the most critical position?
On the first part, I do expect Colt McCoy to be that starter Week 1 if Kyler Murray is unavailable. One, he's the veteran. He's got the experience, although he's walking into a brand new offense. It's just you feel more comfortable with him at the quarterback position, especially to your next point, that offensive line. You're going to have DJ Humphries at left tackle. The expectation is your 6th overall pick, Paris Johnson Jr., is going to be your starting right tackle. Will Hernandez, who you guys are familiar with, is your right guard. He performed very well when healthy last season. I think he was maybe, I wouldn't say your most reliable offensive lineman. That was Kelvin Beachum, who didn't miss a single game a year ago, but maybe the best offensive lineman a year ago was Will. And then the question mark at who's starting at left guard, and then you brought it up, that center position. Right now they've got Yelda Froholt, who is a veteran, but in his career has only started 4 games at the center position, and that was with the Cleveland Browns, and that was in an emergency. He was the 4th string center, so I've kind of maintained that I would expect and hope that this team goes out and finds another veteran center, not maybe to start, but to compete. And if Froholt wins it out, which he's been the guy all off season, then you have him as your starting center. The other thing with Colt McCoy, with a veteran at quarterback who's seen a lot, that could take some pressure off an offensive line that has had its issues, especially in the interior. And if you're not quite sure what you're doing at left guard and center, Colt might be able to help that.
I can't believe Lance didn't go here, but I'll go there. Right now on the Our Lads depth chart for the Cardinals, Craig, you have a 5'9" wide receiver.
That was going to be my next question.
You took it from me. 5'7" wide receivers. I've never seen anything like it. Now, they did draft Michael Wilson, and I want to get your take on what you saw from him in the spring, because I thought, he was great. I was out at the Senior Bowl. I thought he played really well out there. He always has injury issues, but if he's healthy, I think he could be good. Run me down this wide receiver group, and are we really going to see these 3, 5'9", and under guys make up your wide receiver core?
The returning wide receivers, they're all under 6 feet tall, but there was a conscious effort by Monty Ossenfort, whether it was through the drafts or free agency or undrafted free agents. Everyone they added, Zach Pascal, free agent, 6 feet tall. Michael Wilson, draft pick, taller than 6 feet tall. So you're bringing back who you're inheriting in Hollywood Brown, who's in a contract year. You need to find out whether he is someone that you want to retain. Rondell Moore going into year 3. Can he remain healthy? When healthy, he's been very dynamic. But I do think you're going to see a conscious effort within this offense, whether that's 2 wide receivers or 3. But I do think you're going to see a little bit more of that taller wide receiver, and there is a buzz and there's a lot of expectation because of that buzz from Michael Wilson, who had a injury-plagued college career at Stanford, got his way into the Senior Bowl, played well in the Senior Bowl, and got his name called during the draft, and he's another taller wide receiver. Again, if healthy, he might be able to surprise some people this season.
When you take into consideration what John was talking about, Craig, with respect to the size of this receiving core, I'm curious from an offensive philosophy standpoint, because you talked about the scheme. Can you envision that maybe the offense is going to be built around the shiftiness of these guys, and that Colt McCoy is not going to look for the home run and the 50-50 ball since a DeAndre Hopkins is not there, and they're going to try to just outrun guys, screen passes, get them out into open field, pile up yak yardage? What's your take on just the overall philosophy of this offense now with a smaller stature of receivers?
I think they're going to try to run the ball a lot more. That's what we've been told, whether it was from coaches, from players. Running back James Conner, his face lit up when we asked about the offense, because we really don't know what new offensive coordinator Drew Pretzing wants to do. I mean, yeah, you go back to his background with the Cleveland Browns, but you kind of have to revolve or base what you want to do on the talent that you have on the roster. So we've been told that they want to run the ball, and that's going to be a dramatic difference from the previous 4 years under Cliff Kingsbury, when the run-pass ratio was 38 to 62. I'm not going to say that it's going to get flipped to where they're running it more than passing, but I do think you're going to see more of a 50-50 offense, provided that you can stay within a score or 2 or have a lead. If you're trailing by 2 or 3 scores, much more difficult to run the football.
Yeah. I'm going to jump over here to defense, and I'll start with the head coach, Jonathan Gannon, who comes over from Philadelphia. You guys do have a defensive coordinator in Nick Rawls, but I'm sure Jonathan Gannon will be playing a large role in putting this defensive scheme together. What has it been like, dealing with Gannon as head coach? What kind of vibe has he brought to the building, and what do you expect his defense to look like from a schematic standpoint?
High energy. I mean, with the cameras rolling, without the cameras rolling, running into them on the field, off the field. Jonathan Gannon is high energy, and I think his players appreciate that and the consistency. Now, it's easy maybe to do that in the off season. How does he handle the grind of a regular season that maybe might have its bumps in the road? Can you still bring that attitude each and every week? As far as the expectation defensively, every time we've tried to ask, the Eagles were a 4-3. Cardinals traditionally have been a 3-4. But again, what does Gannon want to do versus what can he do with the roster and the talents? So defensive line is a huge question mark. Yeah, there's a lot of players in that room. But as far as can you get a rotation where you have 4 defensive linemen, I think what you're going to see is a little bit different, maybe a lot different than what he did with the Eagles, because there is no Fletcher Cox on this Cardinals defensive line. And you might see the Cardinals try to manufacture pressure. The Eagles didn't have to do that. The Cardinals just might because of the defensive line. And then if you look at what they have at edge rusher, they don't have that proven pass rusher. They moved Zaven Collins from inside linebacker to outside linebacker to kind of help bolster that room. And then the trickle down is, if you don't have a great pass rush, well, you better have a good secondary. And at cornerback, there's question marks there. Can Marco Wilson, can Antonio Hamilton be your starting 1 and 2 cornerbacks, or does this team have to look once training camp begins and preseason games start? So, again, goes back to what I said originally. There's a lot of questions that everyone has and everyone wants answered yesterday. We're just not going to know maybe until that first couple of games into the regular season.
Craig, you brought up he doesn't have Fletcher Cox. He also doesn't have a lot of other guys on that Eagles roster. I mean, that was pure richness in terms of the defensive rotation and quite the luxury. And I want to further expand on your point about the pass rush, because if you just look at it from a statistical standpoint, I mean, they only had 36 sacks last season. It's not a number that jumps off the page, but Craig, you're removing J.J. Watt, who had 12 and a half, so he had a third. Zach Allen, who I think is extremely underrated, and even Marcus Golden, who was briefly here with the Giants, gave you at least some flashes. So, I mean, you lose a lot of production. Who in your mind, for our listeners and our viewers who are not familiar with the depth chart in Arizona, who could step up this season that maybe is a young guy that now is going to get more snaps that will be able to take advantage of his opportunity?
And Craig, I do think you have some really talented young guys, too, that got drafted the last couple of years.
Yeah, and two right off the top that saw sometime last year, I think fans wanted to see more of, are Cameron Thomas and Myjai Sanders. They each had 3 sacks a year ago. Cameron Thomas, a taller edge rusher, maybe even could be a defensive end where he puts his hand in the dirt. Myjai Sanders, a little bit more of a Chandler Jones type, who Cardinal fans remember here and maybe wish that he was retained and did not leave via free agency to the Raiders. But those two, and then, as I mentioned, Zaven Collins, can he develop into that edge rusher? And then the second-round draft pick out of LSU, B.J. Ojulari, who had some success at LSU rushing the quarterback, did not see him on the field this offseason. Now, he's not signed yet, but that wasn't a big deal. He was dealing with what we think was what he was dealing with during the pre-draft process, and that was a hamstring issue. Nothing definitive was announced by the Cardinals, but kind of connecting the dots here, did something flare up again, and they're just being cautious. And we've seen across the league the slow signing of second-round picks, but I do expect that to get done before training camp starts.
Last one from me. I got to ask you about Isaiah Simmons, Craig, because when the Giants drafted Andrew Thomas, I guess, 3 drafts ago now, we sat here and we debated for a month and a half about Isaiah Simmons or an offensive lineman, and the conversation we had constantly about Isaiah Simmons is if you draft him, you have to have a role for him, because you could see him as an undersized linebacker. You could see him as a safety. Paul, one of our co-hosts, thought he would be maybe even a good edge pass rusher. And it seems like the Cardinals have kind of bumped him around trying to find that role. So I guess my question for you is, now that you've seen him for a few years, what does Isaiah Simmons do best? And what do you think his role is going to be this year? Because, frankly, I always saw him as more of a traditional safety type. How do you think he's going to get used so you can unlock all of that talent in him?
I think he does better in space. And what we've seen over the last year plus now is he's strictly worked with the safety group. When practice, the open portion, he's always been with Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, even going back to a year ago. And his most snaps played a year ago was at slot corner. So the idea that Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons were going to be those 2 tall trees at inside linebacker, that's what then general manager Steve Keim had envisioned. That's completely out the window. This is a huge year for Isaiah. His 5th-year option was not picked up. That doesn't mean he can't be retained by the Cardinals, but his future with the Cardinals in the NFL will be determined on how he plays this season. He's great at accumulating stats and getting those big highlight plays. The problem with Isaiah has been the consistency week in, week out, quarter by quarter, series by series. And I do think what you'll see based off what we've seen so far in the offseason is him to be on that back end of the defense, whether, again, that's kind of formulating a nice back end with Budda and JT, or maybe at slot corner to help out a cornerback room that certainly has some question marks, and maybe Isaiah just kind of bounces between playing deep safety and maybe covering a wide receiver or a running back.
Yeah, especially with Byron Murphy leaving in free agency, so I could see his value helping out the corner spot. You brought up Budda Baker, Craig. His name was surrounded by trade rumors for the majority of the offseason. Clearly, they didn't move him, and I know he has this year under contract. I believe he's under contract next year and maybe is scheduled to be a free agent in 2025. Not to say that the Cardinals should have an itch to move him, but given what we started this conversation off with, the fact that they're getting younger, looking to maybe build the foundation this year, what is his future, you think, this year as well as beyond with the team at this point?
He'll be an Arizona Cardinal in 2023. He was at mandatory minicamp, didn't participate on the field, but was in the building, was on the field with his teammates, laughing, joking. So he's not going anywhere, whether something gets done between now and the start of training camp to maybe make Buddha a little bit happier. He has no guaranteed money on his deal this year or next year, but you're not going to cut Buddha Baker. So his salary, which I think is just over $13 million this season, is going to be guaranteed once he's on the roster week 1. So he's getting that money. He's not going anywhere. It's just beyond this year, and I think Monty Ossenford has kind of taken, again, a wait-and-see approach. What do we have? And then really look towards whether that's trades or free agency to kind of bolster the roster in 2024, because there's a lot of cap space now moving forward, and there was a lot that Monty had to clean up with respect to the cap with what he walked into from the previous front office. So now Buddha Baker's an Arizona Cardinal. I think based off what Monty has said, what Gannon has said, they hold Buddha in such high regard and use him as the example of what they want in an Arizona Cardinal player, both on and off the field. So they'll work something out to where Buddha is happy. And he just strikes me, guys, as someone that, he might not like where he is as far as on the pecking order of safeties across the league, but he's hard to take off the football field.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's one of those players that, the whole I'm going to hold in. He just doesn't strike me as someone like that. He wants to play. He likes to play. He has the passion for the game to where I don't see him, sitting out an entire season or even half the season. That just doesn't strike me as him as a football player.
Craig, awesome stuff, man. Tell the folks where they should go check out all your work and anything else you guys are doing down there in Arizona that they should be aware of.
azcardinals.com for all of our content, Arizona Cardinals YouTube page as well. And, just looking forward to training camp.
Craig, good stuff, man. Enjoy the weaning weeks of our time off before the grind begins again at the end of July, my man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Craig.
My pleasure, guys.
Craig Grialou, azcardinals.com, writes for the homepage and the digital content as well. Good to have him on here. And we got through the Yola interview without mentioning Caleb Williams, who I'm sure a lot of Arizona fans are probably thinking about as potential first overall pick next year.
Sure.
Because, look, Lance, I like to be kind because, in the NFL, all these guys are talented and every game's hard to win. But there's a little bit of a talent deficiency on the Arizona Cardinals this year. It's not a pretty depth chart.
No, not at all. And it's no picnic early on in terms of the schedule. Not to say that they can't regroup, but whenever you have a veteran quarterback, John, to me, sometimes all bets are off. Because if McCoy makes good decisions, doesn't turn the ball over, could they be a tough out for a number of games? It's possible.
I think they can survive on offense.
You're worried about
I
the
don't
defense?
see how they're stopping it.
Well, I mean, we just went over the pass rush, and I named all the guys they lost.
The corners?
True. Well, but it's even worse for the corners if you can't get after the quarterback.
No, I mean, they both feed on each other. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's rough.
It is. Somebody's going to have to emerge for Arizona. Once again, I think Gannon is a good coach because, remember, before he came to Philadelphia, he was with Indianapolis, and they didn't necessarily have the who's who on defense, and I thought overall they did a nice job putting together a scheme.
And he plays a lot of zone.
Yeah, exactly.
Bend but don't break. They're not going to give up a lot of big plays.
Yep.
But, boy, there's just not a lot of players over there.
No, there's not a lot of game changers, guys that you could really see putting your stamp on the team and getting those opportunistic plays that all of a sudden is going to flip field position and so forth. But I feel like every single year we go into a season, we look at a roster on paper, and there's always one team. I'm not saying it's going to be Arizona, but especially early in the season, from the Giants' perspective, John, I will say this. Is it a winnable game? 100%. But those first four games, right?
No. I wasn't making the point that way.
I'm not assuming you were. But the first four games in particular, that's why, to me, timing is everything when you play an opponent. It's not so much what they show on paper, because early in the season, a lot of these guys are not going to play in the preseason. It's a feel-it-out process. The first quarter of the year is almost an extension of the preseason.
And they'll have stuff in their offensive scheme that the Giants have never seen before.
Of course, because they're more of a guessing game.
Yep.
They've got new coaching all over. And you can tell me all you want about, Colt McCoy and, Hollywood Brown, but there's things that this coaching staff is going to bring to the table that we have not seen yet, just like the Giants were new.
Sure.
There were things that Tennessee, right, in week 1 last year was planning for, and they didn't have a read on it because the Giants were a brand new offense. So the timing in which the Giants play the Cardinals, I think, is interesting as opposed to a team that's going to see Arizona in week 10. I think you're going to have a better grasp from a schematic standpoint what they're running.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question here, and then Scott in New Mexico will get to you. Don't worry, we'll get to you in a second. Then we'll open up the phone calls. And guys, remember, we can do some longer calls now, different types of deeper discussions. We don't have a lot of, news of the day for the next month until camp starts. So we can do a lot of different stuff. So feel free, pick up the phone, give us a call, 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. I'm going to ask you this question, Lance. If I made you handicap it right now, take a look at the NFL standings or group of teams. What team, or you could put a little tier of teams, do you think are most likely to have the first overall pick in the draft next year?
I put the Houston Texans there. I know they have C.J. Stroud, but as I mentioned to Craig in our conversation, also structurally, the way they put contracts together, and they have a new coach in DeMeco Ryans, he's evaluating a lot of the guys on this roster.
Oh, the Texans are in the mix there. 100%
so Houston,
agree.
I would absolutely put there. I would not put any teams in the AFC East.
Or
I
West.
would not put any teams in the West, North and North. So I think
No, not the North either. You're right.
So to me, it's the Texans.
And I would think Indy's going to be better too, right?
I do. Well, because once again, I've been campaigning. I think Gardner Minshew should start. I'm not saying he's going to take him to the promised land, but John, to me, the right philosophy is play Gardner, give Anthony Richardson time, and then make the transition. Richardson barely played in college, barely has a resume. Minshew knows Shane Steichen's scheme. Mm-hmm. They were together in Philly. If they play it like that way, I think Indy could be a tough out.
And I'll tell you what, even if they start Richardson, if they lean into his running ability, that's a very difficult. Him and Jonathan Taylor and
a 1-2 punch.
And they tried to improve that offensive line a little bit this offseason after they took a big step back last year.
Yep.
That could be you remember the old Robert Griffin III, Alfred Morris, Washington team? Yeah. I mean, that can be very difficult to stop.
Well, and also Jalen Hurts, what he's coming from. Jalen Hurts with Miles Sanders.
100%.
The only thing is, remember, Hurts needed a year to get that passing game going. Correct. Does Richardson have that threat of a passing attack as much as he does as a runner?
Very fair.
But I'm with you. I would not put Indy in that category. So to answer your question, Houston is the only AFC candidate in my mind.
I'm with you.
We go to the NFC. I don't see a team in the NFC East. I think the Commanders are going to be tough, even if Howell is the starting quarterback. So I would not put them in that category.
And look, the Commanders have managed to have been within shouting distance of 500 rotating quarterbacks each of the last 3 years. So
sure.
I'm with you. 100%.
Well, they have a good defensive front, and I like the receivers around.
No, they have really good weapons.
So as long as he protects the football, let them do the heavy lifting.
And their offensive line is good enough. It's not great, but it's
fine.
I
mean, look, they brought in Nick Gates.
Right.
They made some changes. So I think that they're going to be at least respectable.
I agree.
The North, let me say, if Jordan Love and that Packers team, listen, it's possible.
I mean, their defense is really good,
their
though. That's
defense,
the thing.
But boy, man, a defense could be put in a very tough position if the offense doesn't help you. So, Green Bay is in that gray area. I'll put them maybe right outside the bubble. I think Justin Fields and the Bears will improve. I like the talent they brought in around them. So
I agree.
I don't anticipate the Bears. And the Vikings and the Lions were both very respectable teams last season. Even if you think Minnesota's going to take a step back because all of those one-score games.
Kirk Cousins is still a good quarterback.
They're not going to toy with that.
Agreed.
So I'm not going to nominate anybody from the North. We go to the South. I don't think the South is going to be as bad, John, as it was last season. If you think everyone's going to be sub 500 for the second straight year, I don't think you've been watching how NFL football plays out.
I agree.
So Carolina, I think Frank Reich is going to have Bryce Young in a position where he is going to develop and show improvement. Atlanta, I'm a little bit worried about, but they do have Taylor Heineke. If Desmond Ridder doesn't pan out, they got Heineke, and Heineke has a lot more experience.
And by the way, the NFC South also plays the AFC South this year, which is a much easier division to play in the other conference.
It's funny. You took the words out of my... I was having this exact conversation on Sirius XM. The point was the NFC East was a product of what they played outside of the division and, by the way, outside of the conference.
That's not just the Giants.
No, it's everybody.
I went back through it. Do you know what the NFC East did against the AFC South last year? Did you look it up?
Well, they took the brooms out pretty much.
15-1. Yeah. They lost one game.
What was that? Jacksonville knocking off Dallas.
I believe so. Actually, I take it back. I think it was 14-2 because I think Washington lost one game in that group too.
That sounds about right. Yeah, I think Washington, didn't they lose to?
I think they lost to like maybe Tennessee earlier in the year or something
yeah,
like that.
I think Carson Wentz threw a game-winning touchdown against somebody in that division.
It
It
could have been the Colts, but
I don't remember who it was.
It was 14-2.
Yeah, and remember also Dallas was up big in that game.
They were.
It took that Dak fluky pick six to help them with the game. So the point is, I'm 100% in agreement with you. If you look at who the NFC South plays this year, they benefit from a schedule perspective just like what the East did. So you got to take that into consideration. That's more of a reason why I think the South is going to improve. And Baker's got veterans around him.
No, look, the Bucs roster is pretty good. The Panthers roster is pretty good.
So
the Saints have a respectable roster, and the Falcons have that really funky offense, multi-positional thing.
Cordero Patterson.
Yeah,
Robinson, who they drafted.
Pitts, all those guys.
I mean, they could just run the ball over your throat.
And they have a great offensive line.
Yeah. So, that's another reason why I'm not heavy in nominating anybody from there.
I agree.
And then, once again, the West, the Niners and the Seahawks are always well-respected teams. The Rams, I think, will bounce back because they were hit by the injury bug.
Assuming Stafford's healthy, they'll be better.
Yeah, so, I mean, it comes back. And oh, by the way, what Sean McVay did with Baker Mayfield
late
last season, too.
Sure.
You shouldn't underestimate. And the revolving door of running backs. It comes back to Houston and the team we just previewed in Arizona. I mean, those are the two strongest candidates to be in the mix for the top overall.
That's why I asked the question, because I think most off seasons it's a wider conversation than that. Because I think we actually talked about this last year, if I'm not mistaken, right? And heading into last year, I think the teams we put in that conversation was Houston, obviously, because they were terrible, and they ended up having the worst record in the league, right, at 3-13-1. I think we put.
Denver wasn't in that conversation.
We all thought Matt Ryan was going to be better than he was, so we did not think the Colts were going to be in that
I was
mix.
very high on the Colts. I'll be the first one to admit that.
We
saw the injuries play out.
No one else in the AFC, I think, we believe will be in that conversation. And then the NFC, I mean, I think we all thought it was going to be Houston before the season started, and that's, I think, where it pretty much wound up.
Well, I think Chicago may have been in that conversation.
Chicago was too. You're right.
I don't think people had high expectations of the Bears.
Houston. Those are the two teams last year. And Chicago, guess what? Those two teams had the two worst records.
Yeah.
It's almost easier to predict who the really bad teams are going to be than who the really good teams are going to be sometimes.
Well, because also what happens is, John, and I bring this up every year, you can't predict the injuries. A lot of the teams, if you go back to the standings from last year and you say, well, we thought they were going to be better. Once again, Indy had issues with the offensive line, partially because of injuries, partially because of the lack of execution. The quarterbacks became a revolving door, which never helps your team.
No.
Then you look at the New Orleans Saints. I know they weren't dreadful because they were still in the mix, mathematically speaking, but they finished with the worst record in their division. You had some changes around there. The wide receivers didn't pan out
it's funny,
from a health perspective.
But they had the best point differential in the division at -15. It's funny how that works.
Which, once again, I don't know if that says much of anything based on the division, but
still, I mean,
it is.
To my point, the Giants were -6, so they only did 9-point differential than what the Giants had.
Well, and I also think it's a reflection of the Saints' defense kept them in the thick of things, right? If you got a good defense, even if your offense struggles, they can at least
and they also lost Sean Payton
keep
too,
in games.
Obviously hurt him.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about that. Even though Dennis Allen was an assistant under him, you don't have that offensive mindset that Sean brought to the table. And, I mean, other than that, I'm just looking at some of the teams. Well, the Rams. The Rams were hit by injuries, too.
Oh,
and
they
were
battered.
5-12. So most of the teams that maybe we didn't anticipate finishing where they were, I think, once again, you could point to injuries playing some type of a role, or the new coach coming in and just not getting a strong grasp on his team. For example, like a Nathaniel Hackett in Denver and Russell Wilson not clicking immediately with that staff.
Correct. All right, let's get to it. 201-939-4513. But first, remember, go subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast. It features long-form interviews with Giants players, coaches, and front office staff, past and present. Plus, hear from some of the best analysts covering Big Blue in the NFL. Search for the Giants Huddle and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or go to giants.com/podcast. And don't forget, if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star positive review. For all of our Giants podcasts, including the Giants Huddle and Big Blue Kickoff Live, we're in the middle of our player interview series. My interviews with Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor already up there. We just posted the offensive tackle interviews. Did Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal, Marcus McKeithen, and Matt Peart. That went up Monday. And then, Lance, you had 3 really good interviews with some college coaches for some Giants draft picks going up today.
Yeah, I spoke to a coach connected to every single prospect, including some with you. So we've been sprinkling them around over the course of the last few weeks. And this one is focusing on the back end of the draft. So, you're going to get, I think, some good insight on what some of these guys could do, whether it be from a special teams perspective or can they actually carve out a role from the defensive side of things. And a lot of the guys, and this goes back to the homework and research we did with a lot of these prospects. Remember, some of these players, John, if you recall, they took a very interesting path to the NFL.
Community college, junior college, all that stuff.
So a lot of the conversation is going into how'd you find the guy in community college when you brought him in, what was your game plan, and so forth. So I think, and I hope that a lot of our viewers and listeners get some good insight out of what the coaches bring to the table.
And there's some X's and O's talk, but it's more getting.
Oh, absolutely.
But
sure.
No one knows these players and the intangibles that we can't see from the film than the guys that coach them in college, and that's the type of insight we get. So great job by Lance doing those 3 interviews. Check that out on the Giants Huddle podcast. And don't forget, we just talked about the 2022 NFL schedule. Well, the 2023 schedule is out. We know who the Giants are playing and when, and single-game tickets are on sale now. Don't miss the Giants at MetLife Stadium this season. Visit Giants.com/tickets to secure your seat. All right, Scott in New Mexico has been very patient. He will lead us off today. Hi, Scott.
Hey, guys. How you doing
We're
today?
doing great.
Doing all right.
Interesting conversation. I'm sort of leaning actually towards Arizona getting the first pick.
Yeah, me too. And then it'll be Josh Rosen all over. It'll be the Josh Rosen
right.
scenario all over again.
But actually, I'm more interested in who gets the last pick. I hope it's the Giants, which means
I think we all do. Absolutely.
So my question, I have actually 2 questions. The first one has to deal with the Wink Martindale defense. Last year, the Giants were the number 1 blitzing team in the NFL. Actually, far and away, I think it was close to 45%.
It was a lot.
And they didn't actually do too well. And it obviously may have had something to do with personnel. The opposition's completion percentage was at 60%. The quarterback rating was at 94%. So the blitzing really wasn't as effective as it should have been under former Wink Martindale defenses in Baltimore.
Yeah, but Scott, I will say this. They did not give up a lot of big plays, which is something
true.
that happens a lot when you blitz a lot. And I think that's a credit to the fact that they were able to blitz, create some pressure, create some sacks, but not give up big plays in the process. Now, the problem came in. They couldn't stop the run.
Yeah, that's where the explosive plays were.
I think the pass defense was actually okay, given what the talent was at cornerback last year. I think they actually made out better than I thought they would at the start of the year. Now, some of that's based on the opponents they've played, too. They didn't play a lot of explosive passing offenses. But the real issue, and I think part of it, too, was on early downs because of the issues in the secondary. They were trying to keep 2 safeties deep a lot. So you were playing, thinner fronts, which allowed other teams to run the ball. So I think all that kind of goes into the mix there.
Well, just real quickly, Scott, before I let you continue, to piggyback off of John's points, to give you numbers to put things in perspective, I keep tally of 300-yard passers, 100-yard receivers, and 100-yard rushers. The Giants only gave up 2 300-yard passers last season, so I think that spells out, John, what you're talking about. Trevor Lawrence, you want to try to name the second one?
Dak?
No. It's actually, I don't think it's somebody you're going to get because it's not a main guy. So it's the
Kirk Cousins?
No. I mean, you got to really think.
I need to look at the schedule.
Yeah.
All right, now I give up. Who was it?
Davis Mills.
Oh, yeah, I would not have gotten that. No, absolutely not. No shot.
Yeah. Trevor Lawrence. Well, that's why it's interesting.
No shot.
Trevor Lawrence, that's why I say we would have been here all day with you naming every quarterback.
I would have named every quarterback.
You would have been naming quarterbacks that didn't even play
actually
against the Giants last year. You'd be like, did they play the
Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah.
No.
So Trevor Lawrence, 310, Davis Mills, 319. And also, that's not even on the high side, over 300 when you think about it. So that spells out the run plays were the biggest devastating blow, more so than the guys through the air last season. Just to give you an idea.
Now, you can make the argument, too, Scott, that, if
you run well, you're not going to have to throw. Sure.
Correct. The pass attempts are down because the team just ran the ball down their throat. So everything's connected, obviously.
Sure.
Right, but now that they have a change in personnel, I'm a big fan of Tamon Fox. I think he's going to work out very well for them. Ojulari, if he stays healthy, is great. I even think of potentially moving Leonard Williams to the outside where he can become a defensive end, too.
Leonard Williams is a defensive end in their 3-4 setup.
Right. So I think they have more pressure they can give. But do you think there'll be an alteration? And because if they're blitzing that much, and even though, as you said, they're keeping the big plays off the table, they're still allowing a lot. And so I'm wondering, with better personnel, do you think they might alter the amount of blitzing they do and play more one-on-one because of the people they have on the outside? In other words, with Adoree Jackson, and of course,
Scott,
if Deonte Banks works out.
I totally get your point. There is 0.0 in Wink Martindale's historic profile that indicates he will reduce his blitz rate.
Scott,
Right.
yeah, I mean, look at, and I'm sure you've been familiar with the numbers. Go back and look at the years from 2018 to the present day. Baltimore and the Giants.
I actually am looking at them.
Okay, then what you're going to find is, because I've done this exercise, they were either number 1 or number 2, essentially, in blitz percentage in the NFL. So if you think all of a sudden he's going to see a different light in 2023, I'd be very surprised.
If anything, I think he'll be maybe more aggressive because if he has cover corners that he can trust to cover man-on-man more. Because I think the way the Giants blitzed last year, Scott, they would blitz, but they would play off. So they would give up plays underneath more than they would give up plays over the top. Yeah. I think maybe if you have a couple corners that you think can really play press, maybe you'll do a more aggressive blitz scheme with more press man and stuff like that than the way they kind of executed their packages last year.
Okay. My second question has to do with Daniel Bellinger. Obviously, they have a lot of weapons now, and Waller's going to be the center of the offense. But Bellinger was sort of coming on late in the year, and it was proving to be, I happen to be familiar with him when he was at San Diego State. And so his coach, my son, as I mentioned on another broadcast, my son knows his coach pretty well. And they said Bellinger can catch the football. So the real key is he's bulked up, as I've seen, and he is going to be a great blocker. But can they utilize somebody like Bellinger in the offense as another real serious weapon? Because they can't guard everybody. Waller's going to require probably 2 people to make sure he doesn't get loose. And then, of course, the outside speed. But Bellinger can be an effective weapon. I really want to know how you think they're going to use Bellinger. And do you think he can become important? Because I think he caught 30 passes last year.
Yeah, he had 35 catches. 35 targets, and 30 receptions. You were correct.
Right.
Yep.
So can they up that, and especially in the red zone? And they're going to use Waller in the red zone, I'm assuming, as well. But do you think he becomes another really effective weapon and really becomes a serious tight end? And that was the question really I was going to ask. So I'll let you guys go on that.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, Scott. Appreciate the phone call. You want me to jump in first?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't foresee, John, his numbers exponentially increasing, even if you're going to give him more games, because remember, he got hurt October 23rd. He didn't return until December 4th, and he was being targeted. I have the breakdown here, about the same after the injury versus prior to the injury. Waller's going to get the bulk of the targets. That's stating the obvious. Then you got to take into consideration, John, the wide receivers who were hurt last season. You're putting Wan'Dale Robinson back on the field, okay? I mean, we barely got to see what he could do. He's going to get some targets. We'll see what happens with respect to Isaiah Hodgins now on the team for a full season, right?
Paris Campbell being brought
Paris
in
Campbell.
too, yeah.
So, I mean, as much as you want to say, can you get more out of Bellinger? My response would be yes. I don't think that's a stretch. I think Bellinger is more than capable of catching the football. If you asked him to do more, he could do that. But the second part of the equation is, John, is he going to get the targets and opportunities to take his game to that level? I don't see that happening.
Yeah, and the question is, how many snaps is he going to get? You know, are the Giants still going to remain a primary 11 personnel team? For the fans that don't know, 11 personnel is 1 running back, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end. Or with Darren Waller's versatility, where he's technically a tight end, but basically his wide receiver skills, do they play more 12? Where Waller acts as that wide receiver, and Bellinger still was on the field a lot. Now, we haven't seen much in Dable and Kafka's past that indicate they want to play a lot of 12 personnel, but Darren Waller's a different type of player, and the Giants aren't rolling out a bunch of all-pro wide receivers either. So I think it'll be interesting to see what their personnel package usage is, given Waller's presence along with Bellinger.
Well, and I'll add to your point. Let's go down the hypothetical road, John, that they play more 12 personnel, like you indicated, because Waller is cut from a different cloth.
Yeah.
How much is going to be designed, though, even by putting Bellinger on the field? I guess my question is that Daniel's going to be looking towards him, even if you have him on the field.
Yeah, I agree. Bellinger, to me, and maybe he could develop into more than this, but based on what we saw last year, he's a guy that they would design stuff for, right? Like bootlegs. He'd leak out. They'd use them out of the backfield a couple times on plays. But it wasn't a guy that you would try to isolate in a route and say, go beat this guy with your route savviness and speed and quickness. He would be part of a designed, oftentimes play-action package to get him the ball on design routes. And I think that's going to be similar to what his role is this year. So, in short, I agree. I don't see his numbers jumping off the page. I think maybe if they didn't bring Waller in, you could make an argument that his numbers would make a bigger jump. But with Waller here, the number 2 tight end on the team, if you look at historically, they catch 40 balls. That's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. If you want to give him 10, 15 more catches, I think that's reasonable because, remember, you have to account for all the games he missed.
Right.
Yeah, and if you kept that trajectory going, you could see him finish last season with about 40, 42 catches. I don't think that's crazy at all based on the math. That, to me, I think is a reasonable target. And, hey, if he could stay healthy and be another complementary weapon, I think the Giants would be content with that. Correct. I think that's exactly what you want to see out of Bellinger.
Yeah, I think his run blocking is much more important than his pass receiving this year, given Waller's presence and his role on the team. Now, if Waller can't stay healthy, and we've talked about this, then our conversation changes.
Completely changes the equation. Yeah. Then we're talking about better numbers because you're going to target him, you're going to involve him more, and you're not going to isolate him as a blocker.
He's your number 1 tight end at that point.
So I think this is how you have to view it. You feel good about your depth chart, John, that God forbid Waller misses some time. I think the experience Bellinger got last season, he proved that although he was mainly a blocker in a run-heavy offense at San Diego State, you can tap into other parts of his skill set. And that in the event that Waller does go down, you may not have to completely change and fine-tune your scheme because, A, Bellinger was in it last year, and the coaching staff is familiar with what he could do. So I think you got to feel good from that standpoint. But if Waller and Bellinger are out and about and fully healthy, Bellinger's the complementary piece. Waller is going to be the guy that they're going to feed targets to.
100% agree. 201-939-4513. Giants fans, take your fandom to the next level with a season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2023 season. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit Giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And while you're online, go check out the Giants official connected TV streaming app, Giants TV. It brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. All right, let's go back to the phones at 201-939-4513. Dave in Cranford. Dave, what's up?
Yo, John and Lance, it's been actually a long time, man. It's great talking to you guys.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, of course, man. I literally waited till the two of you were on to call in. I used to call in a lot. You guys together are just a great duo. I'm not making any comments to anybody else, but you two together, you play off each other well, you bust on each other well. I don't know if it's your...
No, Dave, we've known each other since college, so that probably has something to do with it.
I was thinking of other things, like maybe it's your size, your love for basketball. I was trying to think of a couple of things. But
commonality, sure. Yeah,
and we're both from Brooklyn. Come on.
But hey, I just want to say thanks, man. The content you guys put out there, it's just amazing. And as a Giant fan,
appreciate it.
It really is just first class. I mean, everyone knows it. I love the fact that you see some of the content creators on that do blogs and stuff as they pull up information the good quality ones, the Dan Schneiders and Nick Filatos and Bobby Skinners of the world, they give you guys a lot of credit, in terms of where the information came from and where they got the information that they're putting out there on their own blogs or their own podcasts, which I think is which is important to do, but I still think says a lot about you guys. So just want to say thanks about that. My comment that I would, of course, guys, man, it's easy, man. You guys do, it's just killer stuff. So, hey, my comment about
checks in the mail, Dave. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that, guys. No, I really do.
1 cent.
My exactly.
Good luck to see if it bounces or not. Yeah.
I get it. That's about what it's worth, maybe less. You guys are the best. So my comment's a little bit more big picture, but I think it's really important. And going into this season, I very happy with a lot of just moves the team's made. I think you guys have gone over them a lot. But I really think the biggest one is listening. If you listen closely, particularly to the attitude that Daboll sets as a coach and the whole staff, really, and it filters down to Daniel Jones, and it filters down to a lot of the leaders on the team. Just about what their attitude is going into this season. And it would have been so easy for this team that overachieved on every level last year, not only made the playoffs, but win a playoff game. Yeah, they get smoked in the next round, which it's an interesting, Daboll's actually commented on that as like, that's his biggest takeaway from the season. But going into this year, they're not really living off of last year. They didn't approach it like, hey, we really accomplished something. They kind of took a much more realistic view. And I think what's most important is that as you hear them comment, particularly about the offense, you don't get the sense from them, Kafka, Daboll, Jones in particular, that they're just refining their offensive scheme from last year. And what I mean by that is just they're not just sitting back and saying, hey, we did pretty well, blah, blah, blah. You look at their scheme last year, by the way, it changed 2 to 3 times during the year.
Absolutely.
Many times, different running schemes week to week, different, use of, play action worked early in the year, didn't work in the middle of the year. Passing game, obviously in Minnesota in the playoff game, you saw them as a much more early passing down team, which worked really well. But going into this year, you hear, you ask Daniel Jones a question like, oh man, so you're much more familiar with the system. And he's like, yeah, I am. And it is easier, yes. But we're still going back and we're installing things, the same way we installed it last year. We're bringing in new, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but, the idea of, hey, we're bringing in new plays and, obviously with new personnel, getting them up to speed, how they're going to fit into the schemes and into the system. And I think that's so critically important because teams are also studying what the Giants did last year, right? So all the other teams in the division and all the other teams in the league that were playing this year, they're looking back last year and they're studying the Giants, tendencies. And if the Giants stay with those tendencies, and I just go back to, and then I'll finish up. I know I'm long-winded, but I'll just
we're
go
taking back
to
the check after all of this. So,
Lance, I get it, man. It's well deserved. But if you had listened to, and I know this is kind of crazy, but after we made the playoffs and lost to Green Bay in that famous game, the head coach comes back the next year, and his message during training camp that year was, we're going to get 1% better.
It was 1% better every day. It wasn't 1% better overall.
Well,
that's a very small barometer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the team needed to get like 25% better every day.
Now, I will say this, though. McAdoo and me and Lance agreed with him on this. We talk about it a lot. He was one of the coaches that was, look, just because you do something well the year before, that does not mean that's necessarily going to carry over. Every year is new and different.
Yeah, he preached that a lot. No,
and he's right about that, by the way.
Yeah, he's on point.
The problem was they had a whole off season. They had the whole training camp. And then they played Dallas in that first game and literally just, came out with the same offensive slant after slant after slant and got smoked. And then obviously that season spiraled out of control. Mm-hmm. I just think that Daboll is setting a different tone.
No, I agree with
that.
I think that's fair.
And I think that, to me, yeah, I could point to so many things. I love a lot of moves they've made, and then there's concerns around the roster, as you guys have pointed out. But that leadership, that difference of like, hey, we didn't really accomplish what we wanted to last year, guys. Like making the playoffs and winning the playoff games, not what we're building around. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is this, and that is, I think this year one of the things that's going to be exciting is that instead of having to find replacements, which they were amazing at. The pro personnel department did a great job going out and finding the Fabian Moreaus and obviously, the Isaiah Hodgins. I mean, it was amazing what they were able to bring in during the year, but that's a tough way to make a living.
Yeah.
This year, I think they're actually going to be able to go to the practice squad, assuming and hopefully that most of our guys that we cut can actually make it through to the practice squad, which is a whole other conversation. But that's going to be so much more helpful to bring in reinforcements that have been in the system, have been in the scheme, have been, as opposed to having to go out on the street and find people off other rosters. So you guys are the best.
Thanks,
I just leave that for your comments, and I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it. The one thing I'll say quickly off of Dave's points, people forget because he's not considered a Belichick guy, but Dable's a Belichick guy. And what is Bill Belichick known for? Completely changing your game plan week to week based on the opponent you're facing and just doing whatever it takes in that given week to win the game.
Yep.
If it's running a lot, it's running a lot. If it's throwing a lot, it's throwing a lot. And he will adjust based on the matchup. And that's what we saw from Dable last year. Week to week, depending on the team and depending on the situation and the talent, he would adjust his game plan. And he went back to McAdoo. He's a West Coast guy. West Coast guys do West Coast things. It's a much more of a rigid system and way of going about things. It's just the nature of the beast. Now, some guys like Andy Reid have grown out of that, and he's someone that has taken it big above and beyond that. But, you go to those, outside zone, Shanahan scheme guys, taking Kyle Shanahan out of it because he's a freaking genius. They do what they do. It's not much different every week. They just execute what they do really, really well. Dable throws a lot. He has a lot. That's why they say his playbook's so complicated and so thick and voluminous, because they want to be able to do different things based on the opponent.
Well, and here's the other thing. You got Kafka on staff, and I think of Kansas City also does a good job of adding new things, right? Every year. How many times, John, you turn on a Chiefs game and
Andy Reid is crazy.
Andy Reid and Mahomes, they're doing, the twirl before they hike and snap
literally,
the football.
They're literally twirling around.
So, those guys are staying in the film room deep into the early morning hours and coming up with things, and Kafka was invested in that. So I think it's a reflection of Dable from Belichick, but also Kafka finding ways within that Kansas City scheme to not get bored to death and come up with new things. I do think it's interesting, the parallel between 2016, which is what the last caller was referencing, and then what happened in 2017 versus what we saw in 2022, because what was the common element in 2016, John? And I brought this up. They were not a dominant team that year.
No, they won a lot of close games.
They won a lot of one-score games, okay? And then what happens the following year? You can't expect to win those games at the same rate. Now, on top of that, 2017, they lost a lot of their key guys. Remember that Chargers game? It wiped out the entire receiving corps.
And defense, too.
Yeah, Vernon, all those guys who you didn't necessarily anticipate injuries. So that took a toll. But I think Dable, having been in the league a very long time, understands when you walk that fine line of winning and losing games by a margin that is minuscule, you cannot look at yourself as a team that just rolled out like a juggernaut.
And Dable is not
going to carry that over.
And he has not been throwing parties for himself this offseason.
No, he hasn't.
He has gone out of his way to be like, look, we're far away from Philadelphia. We have a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, even after the Eagles game, if you remember, a lot of the question was, can you still take the time to look at the season from a big picture perspective? No, couldn't care less. And they were asking him again in the offseason. He's like, you guys want me to, throw the pedal roses down? We're not. The best way that I would describe it is a term I use on other programming. It's the participation trophy mentality.
He comes from a program in New England where winning Super Bowls was the typical. It wasn't like, all right, we won.
And then Alabama, too.
Right.
With Saban.
100%. So, yeah, I'm with you 100%. All right, let's get to Elliot in California. We started a few minutes late, so we can squeeze Elliot in before we say goodbye. What's up, Elliot?
Nice. Yeah, I have a quick comment, a quick question to see if you guys give me your opinion.
Sure.
I actually really enjoyed your conversation on the basketball, how it would correlate to, our players, our skill sets. And, a lot of people don't realize that hockey is very similar to basketball. We play the same amount of games, same amount of people on the court. It's the same size court almost. You run the same kind of play. So
the ice is kind of different, though.
Yeah, and you got
the skates,
and you also have 5-6 different lines. You go much deeper into a hockey roster.
I would like to see basketball teams get to use sticks. That could be fun.
that would be, boy. We're really real. It's a Stretch Armstrong philosophy here. But yes, go ahead. We'll see if this comes full circle.
No, we're going to stretch hard here because I'm going to say your opinion on how. We got to also take into consideration that all these guys are all good ice skaters. So let's just pretend they can all ice skate very well, and how their skills would translate to stick handling, goal scoring, etc. So I'm going to give you my starting 5, and you guys give me your starting 5. Because I think I only have one guy that was on your guys' basketball lineup, or at least your basketball lineup, Lance.
Well, first of all, this was a show that Paul and Casillas did. I did not give my basketball 5. I can assure you.
Neither did I.
Yeah, if you find the show where I did that, please show me, because I'm interested to see what another human being did in my form. Yes.
Now, keep in mind, Lance's basketball team would be similar to the Cardinals receiving corps. Just be a bunch of
right,
5,
all the small guys. Yeah.
Just a bunch of 5'7" guys.
Trenton Holiday is not on the roster anymore, so it'd be very hard for me to put the roster together. Yes.
And also, I can't ask Casillas this, because I don't think Casillas is a hockey fan. I just don't think.
And Elliot, I got to be honest with you, I don't know jack about hockey, so I'm going to pass on giving my starting 5. You can give yours, and then if Lance wants to, he can.
Yeah, I was hoping. I should have called Lance and P-Dot, because I know P-Dot is a hockey fan too. I know Lance knows a lot about hockey. So here's my starting 5. I would like McKinney on D, playing like the Dowdy role, taking shots quick, and I want Bobby on D with him to shut down the ice, play center, shut everything down back there. I want Barkley on wing, maybe like a right wing, right wing. And he's just strong. Have him go to the net. He's quick, good stick handles. I can see him playing really good down low. Paris Campbell, I'd have on the other wing because his size, his build. I think he would be good as a winger also. And then I'd actually put Waller at center, I think, because he's big. He can play 2 ways, and I think he'd have a nice slap shot. He'd just be a good 2-way player. And then I'd put DJ in goalie because he probably has the quickest feet, the best hands. He probably reads the D and can react the fastest. So give me you guys' opinion. I appreciate the call.
Thank you, Elliot. I would just put Dexter Lawrence.
That was going to be.
That's what I was going to say.
So much space.
Yeah,
he's big. He's fast. Just put big Dexter
He's the
there.
most obvious guy. Or Ashawn Robinson. Put him in goal. I mean, that was going to be where I was going to go with the goaltender.
That is my only comment. I have no comment on anything else. Just put Dexter at goalie, and I'm happy.
I was completely with you. That was what I was going to say in terms of the goaltender. I'm surprised he went with the thinnest guy on the roster. You want somebody that's going to eat up space. Well, the only thing I'll throw out is Darren Waller, to me, actually, I think would make sense to be a defenseman. Most of the defensemen in hockey are tall guys.
Sure.
So, to me, Waller, actually, I think would be a good candidate to keep in front of Dex and Ashawn Robinson as a defenseman. I wouldn't necessarily put him at center or on the wing. I think Barkley and Paris Campbell are good candidates in terms of wingers. I'll give you that. Isaiah Hodgins could also be, I think, another defenseman, him and Waller, because I think, once again, you're putting size in front of the goaltender.
He's physical.
Yeah, Bellinger would be another
enforcer.
Yeah, though it's that frame, I guess, is what I'm talking about. That, to me, would make a really good defenseman.
How about like Kayvon at center? Could you be Kayvon at center?
Kayvon,
like that?
Kayvon, I could see him at center, absolutely. Lawrence Cager, who's an athletic guy, maybe put him out on the wing. I could go with that. Barkley, Campbell, and Cager, I think would be my 3 offensive, running the wing like in the Mighty Ducks, if any of you watch those films. The Flying V, excuse me, right? Okay. I want to just be politically correct in terms of the label. And that would round out the group because I named 5 guys plus the goaltender.
All right. And we're out of time, so I'm not going to ask us to list our basketball teams. Maybe another show down the road we can do that.
But lacrosse will be next week. Well, actually, we won't be here next week. But coming back, we'll do a lacrosse team.
I'm happy you reminded us. We have no
rugby.
We have no shows next week because of the July 4th holiday, so keep that in mind. No show Friday either because the office is closed on. They literally wouldn't let us in the building. We tried to do the show. They're like, no, the building's closed. You're not coming in. So no show Friday, no shows next week. So just keep that in mind moving forward here. Before we say goodbye, Lance, real quick, NBA free agency starts Friday night, right? Do the Bulls make a major trade this offseason?
You just want me to say whether or not Zach LaVine is going to be traded?
No, because honestly, I don't think the Bulls will trade him, but I know he's a name that's been out there and mentioned a lot.
Well, I mean, I don't think they should just get rid of him for the sake of getting rid of him. Actually, if there's any guy that I think the Bulls should move, it's Nikola Vucevic.
Well, he's a free agent, right?
Yeah, but I mean, a sign and trade maybe.
DeRozan just has 1 year left. You can move him if you want.
Yeah, but I mean, DeRozan has been one of their best players.
Oh, he's
of
really
the
good
crew.
still. He's really good.
So I mean, I would hold on to him from that standpoint. And, once again, I think if you're going to move one of those guys, it has to make sense that you get something to build upon moving forward. That's why, you hear about these teams, they trade these guys for draft picks. I'm not a big fan of collecting draft picks for the sake of collecting draft picks. I think you can still acquire a young guy in the NBA through a trade. So my answer would
sounds
be...
like you'd love to trade for R.J. Barrett.
No, trust me, he would not be the first guy in return. I mean, I went over this with the streaky shooters on the Knicks. You think that the Bulls, who've had their own streakiness, they should replace their streakiness with more streakiness?
But you can get two streaky guys.
No, you just want to give away your question marks, okay? And the Bulls are actually in good hands in terms of their management. To answer your question, I would be surprised if they make a major splash right out of the gates of free agency.
And I honestly, I think the Knicks will try to do something. I just don't think there's a lot of really big-time guys available that I would try to trade for, to be honest with you. Like, I wouldn't touch Karl Anthony Towns with a 10-foot pole, like with the success he said, or lack of success in Minnesota. So I just don't think there's a lot of guys out there.
And also staying healthy, too.
Yeah, Lillard and Paul George are both 32, 33 years old. Like, it's just...
PG can't stay healthy. I mean, Lillard, I think, would be the domino of any domino. It'd be Lillard.
Miami, though. I think that's where he's going if he moves.
Well, I mean, if Miami could put together Bam, Jimmy Butler, and Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
Well, no, because Portland supposedly would want Bam in response. Well, I mean, it's worth asking for it. I'm not saying you're going to do it. Yeah, but I mean, if I'm Portland, you're going to want Tyler Hero and Caleb Martin, maybe.
And a bunch of picks, probably.
And a bunch of picks. I mean, I could see that being digestible.
Pearson, how about the Celtics? They do anything big?
They got Porzingis and got rid of Marcus Smart, who I love. So
I was going to say, it seems like he's been kind of almost like the mascot up there for you guys,
He's
right?
He's the heart of the team. He's the heart of the team.
I thought it was a good trade for you guys, but most Celtic fans I've talked to have been very
we just love the guy, that's all. I think we actually did get better, maybe a little softer, but I really am going to miss Marcus Smart.
Yeah, I mean, Porzingis is not a guy that you think defense across the board, but I do
good
think,
shot blocker.
Yes, I do think that they have more length now as a team, and it reminds me a lot of what Denver did. I mean, think about it. Jaylen Brown, Tatum, and Porzingis, that's a lot of length you're going to throw at the opposition on the defensive side of the ball.
Now, talk about trading stars. Day after the trade deadline in the winter, Pearson, is Jaylen Brown still a member of the Celtics?
Yes.
Oh, we're really getting ahead of themselves.
Yes, he is.
Okay. There we go. That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah, I would say I think he's going to be a part of the team too.
Yeah, me too. I think they're going to resign him.
Porzingis puts together the season he did in Washington. I mean, the guy's coming off a career year.
As long as he plays, it's the
That's
injuries.
Washington, though. I guarantee Jordan Poole drops 28 a game next year.
Of course.
Porzingis is going to take 35 shots a game in Washington. There's no one else to shoot. No one's going to be happier than Jordan Poole this year. He is going to be firing
He's going to win
away.
most improved.
He's going to be on his own island without anybody taking the basketball away from him, especially on the perimeter, even though I do like Tyus Jones as well in the backcourt with him.
Not a scorer, though.
No, sure.
All right, let's wrap it up, folks. Little NBA free agency preview as well. Tomorrow it is Datino and Cross. Or no, rather, Datino and Lance. Cross is off this week.
It's not me. I think it's Casillas, isn't it, Casillas?
Oh, it's Datino Casillas.
Yeah, it's Casillas.
I would have gotten. We only have so many hosts. I would have gotten there eventually. I'm an idiot.
Well, I didn't know if Cross maybe switched or whatever.
No.
So that's why
Howard and I were supposed to do Friday, but then they closed the office, so that show got kicked to the side.
Sure.
But yeah, it'll be Datino and Casillas tomorrow, and they are doing Dolphins preview. So they'll go down to Miami and preview the Miami Dolphins. For Lance Medow, I'm John Schmeelk. For Pearson Butler, thanks for being with us on Big Blue Kickoff Live. We'll see you next time.